Rudy A Blends back with another haircut tutorial. Now in this haircut tutorial we are going to be doing a mid to low skin fade. Now in this particular fade, this is like a compressed to tight fade. So this is the fade that tends to be the most hardest ones and the most popular ones. So typically on the barbershop you don't really ask for this type of fade, because this type of fade, man, it's pretty difficult once you're a beginner barber trying to fade, man. It's just ridiculous. You got to use a bunch of the corners to compress fades. So on this particular client, he did wanted the style of like around Johnny Depp. So he kind of want like a slick back and also some weight on the sides. So typically we're gonna make this fade as low as possible, but as mostly as compressed as possible. Now he did told me about the weight line, that he wanted the weight line, but at the same time not as much, because you know typically when you do these type of haircuts, it's gonna look like a chili bowl. Sometimes it tends to look like a chili bowl, sometimes it doesn't. So on that weight line, it really just depends on the customer. Now I remember on my last video I did say, you know, client consultation, all that good stuff. And on this one, I am going to be leaving the weight line. So I started with my Babyliss Pro Skeleton FX, and I did the first guideline, the first ball line with the shape of his head. So I did mess up on this ball line. So when I first started fading, making guidelines, he did have a little dent on the back of his head. So on his occipital bone, it was a little bit bigger than normal. So once we keep going and showing you the fade steps, he did have a little piece. Well, he did like a little ball. Everybody got the ball, you know, the occipital bone, but he had a little bit bigger. So once I started fading started making the first guideline. The first guideline is going to be with the lever halfway. We're going to go about around an inch. So I know this is a compressed fade, but at the same time you want to make this fade as nice and smooth as possible. Just because this is compressed doesn't mean it can't be smooth. You know what I'm saying? So right now I'm going with the number 2 guard all the way open, and right now we're going about an inch. So I did cut his hair 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago was just a regular mid fade, and since now he was wanting to compressed, we're gonna try to change it up, do something different. So right here, as you can see, boom, you're starting to see the little bone that keeps popping out, and that was gonna be the problem, because when the occipital bone tends to pop out, that's when you tend to realize like, oh damn, I should have went lower, or when I'm just gonna start fading it, it's gonna look like a line on the back of his head, which sometimes that line's gonna look normal because that's his head. You can't change his head, you know what I'm saying? You just gotta work what you got. And he got good hair, but that occipital bone, that just kept on popping out. So once you have that occipital bone, you're gonna have to stretch the skin at the back. So you know what I'm saying? So once you hit that bone, you kinda, sometimes depending on the client, you have to go a little bit above the bone. So I know a lot of barbers, when I first started cutting hair, when I'm like cutting below the bone, the occipital bone, I'm not going passing the bone. And sometimes you gotta go past the bone. You know what I'm saying? To make it a nice smooth blend. But keep moving forward. So now we're down fading. So whenever we're down fading, we're gonna use a 1.5 guard. It's gonna be open and then close. So now we're gonna be opening and close. We're using the corners because now we're blending. You see what I'm saying? So we're gonna use 2 to 3 teeth of the blade. So remember, stretch the skin depending on the skin. On this client, typically he did kind of have like a little bit of a looser skin, so I had to stretch the skin up a couple of times, you know, and just keep cutting against the grain. So now obviously you don't want to pass the 2 guard line, because when I went to the 2 guard open, I did like more than an inch, because since we're down fading, you got to give it some room, some space to fade it. Now we're gonna slap the number 1 guard open, and then we're gonna close it. But the number 1 guard open, we're gonna be using the corners. So I know this technique typically is kind of hard when you first start to cut hair. So you know what I'm saying? Because you're not really seeing the guidelines. Boom, boom. You see what I'm saying? Right there, you don't see the bone right there. Man, that's popping out. Oh, and when you don't see the guidelines, you basically have to kind of imagine it. You know what I'm saying? And just use your imagination and pretend like you see like a guideline or a minor guideline. What other barbers tend to do, and it does work. Now, this typically is my steps that I use. Well, I have a bunch of steps that I use on other clients. Sometimes one step doesn't work for the other. This step tends to work for me when I'm using a compressed fade. I use this technique, and I used to use another one. I can show that in another video. But on this one, this works for me. What I've seen other barbers is they make guidelines, but like so tiny. And it's like, nah, I ain't finna do all that. That's even harder for me, because that's kind of like fear of going up. You know what I mean? But after that, then I slapped in one in the half guard, and right now I'm attacking the line above the half lever halfway open. So right here, as you can see, I was getting a little bit of more trouble. When I stretch the skin, it doesn't have a line. But when I leave the skin alone, it tends to look like a line. Now that, typically, you can't really change that. That's just basically his head. What you can do is stretch out the guidelines, but in this case, I mean, my client wanted a compressed fade. So I choose not to do it. So we just have to leave it like that. At the end of the day, even if you do stretch the guidelines on the back of his head, you still gonna look like a line, like you have a big line in there. That's just their shape of their hair. You can't change that. That's how they are. And most clients, they understand that's their head shape. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I hope you don't get those clients that sometimes they blame you. Like, nah, it's you. They blame every barber except for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So don't get discouraged if that's you. I've been there. They trying to blame me when in reality they ain't got no hair. Trying to, you know what I'm saying, make a nice crispy edge when they got no type of, got like 2 to 3 hairs on their forehead. You know, you can't make a lot of haircuts look dope. And that's just reality. You can't. That's when the enhancements comes in. That's when your skills comes in. You know what I mean? But moving forward, now right here, I'm using the lever close. Now to take out this guideline, I'm very being careful. I know it looks like I'm moving fast, but I'm being pretty careful on making a guideline. Because usually right here, if you go too fast, you're going to make another line. So what I'm doing is with the lever close, halfway, and then open. So it's close, halfway, and then open. Now don't be afraid to be going up. At the end of the day, you're going to have to take that guideline out. You can't just leave it there. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to flick out, and just do not use the whole blade. When you use the whole blade, man, you're going to start over again. You see what I'm saying? Most customers on the compressed fade, fades like this, they really like that weight line a lot. Now, I did tell my client, like, hey, this weight line kind of is popping a little bit more than usual. You know what I mean? And I didn't like it. So I tried to convince him, hey, let me smooth it out a little bit, and let's see what we can do. So that way we can make the bulk pop out, but don't pop out as much. I mean, I've seen other barbers use thinning shears, and that works. By all means, you gotta try everything you can, what works for you. You know what I mean? Every barber is different. Every barber has same steps or might be different. It's just different. So right now we finished with the steps, and now we're just gonna do some detail work. Now this is when your skill sets comes in and your experience comes in. So what I did, I slapped the number 2 guard. I felt like it was too much of a bulk, especially right there in the back. It looked ridiculous. I was like, you know what? I slapped the number 2 guard, and I changed the clipper. I have a clipper of Babyliss Pro, the Babyliss Pro clipper, but I have the taper blade on. I don't have the fade blade. So if you don't know, the taper blade is the one that tends to like round out. So that one's kind of reminds me of basically I replaced the Andes Masters with this one. The Andes Masters are, man, some awesome clippers, man, but they too loud. It's like this shit that be too annoying when you trying to talk to your client and then you gotta yell and scream because he can't even hear you because of the clipper. Man, that's too much. You know what I'm saying? But on clipper wise, man, Andes Masters I think is the best. You can't go wrong. For a minute I was using the corded ones, but man, that one started to hurt my wrist for so long. Oof, it was just ridiculous. But as you can see, after I slapped the 2 guard, it didn't take out the line as much as I wanted to. So I was like, well, I gotta go down. So I slapped a 1.5 guard in, and right there, as you can see, that bone was giving me a little bit of trouble. So I was starting to try to smooth it out as much as possible. Right here, that's when I started to see, it's starting to look a little bit more smoother with the 1.5 guard. But I did feel like I still was leaving. The more I was blending, I kept on seeing more little spots that I needed to fix up. So I just slapped the 1 guard, started playing with it. I wanted to go with that half guard, but I was I didn't want to go too high too quickly. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be safe and just slap the 1 guard, 1 guard open. Man, don't be afraid. There's been occasions that I feel like it's with the half guard, but if I'm too scared, then boom, I just slap the 1 guard. And there's been occasions where I thought it was a half guard, but then I just slapped the 1 guard to be more safe, and it just blended in with the 1 guard. It just really, what I'm saying? It just depends. And boom, and yep, I had to slap the 1.5 guard. See, as you can see, you can still see that weight line. But it doesn't look as bad as at least for me personally, it doesn't look as bad. I wouldn't mind for me to going out like that, a nice, a nice, line, the nice weight line, and still a nice clean fade. You know what I mean? You can still see the weight line, and you can see the flared out shape somewhat. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, he kind of does. At the long run, once it grows out, he wants a flared out shape. My name is Rudy A. Blends. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Hey, if you don't like the video, hey man, give me a dislike. You know what I'm saying? Give me a dislike and put a comment. Rudy A. Blends, and y'all stay blessed.